The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. NASCAR, Indycar, Formula 1, FormulaE, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here is your host, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Well, kind of like last week, Matt. Flagship station doing college football. It is that time of year, after all.
Yep.
And it's... we listened to about an hour of their pregame coverage, okay? So I'm not taking anything that they didn't already say about themselves.
Right.
They're in their cupcake part of the schedule. They admit it.
Yeah, they did.
So,
clearly.
Yeah. The flagship station, in case you didn't know, is the home of the number one team in the nation currently, and they're taking on Kent State.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you just deal with that. And their kickoff is at 11, and they have a 4-hour pregame show. I thought 3 hours was a little excessive. 4?
4.
Okay, knock yourselves out. So either way, that knocked us off of the flagship station, but you know what? We got this YouTube channel for specifically this reason. So we appreciate you checking us out here. We got some racing to get to. Not quite as much news and information as last week, but then again, weeks like that very rarely happen. Yep. I think we only had that much news one other time.
That I can recall, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those weeks. Not that this week was short on news. It's big news. It's not necessarily the quantity, it's the quality.
Right.
That's the fun part about it. I'm Steve West. That's Matt Nicholson. Producer John Myers here with us. Appreciate you joining us here on this Saturday morning. And let's get into the recap time from last week and kind of coming into the round of 16 in the Cup Series playoffs. You know, we had never had a non-playoff driver win a race in the opening round. Think about that.
Yeah.
Never had a non-playoff driver won a race in the opening round or the round of 16.
Mm-hmm.
Coming into last Saturday night, there was actually a chance for a non-playoff driver win sweep, and it was Bristol, which is one of those kind of wild card races, not so much necessarily as, say, Talladega, but yeah, Bristol can come up and surprise you a couple of times.
Yeah.
It did. If we go back to the first race of the playoffs, it was Eric Jones. That was Darlington. Then you go to Kansas. That was Bubba Wallace, which really shouldn't come as a surprise because we've talked about how good of a driver he started to become, number one. And number two, he was in the basically same car that won the race earlier this year there.
Pretty much, yeah.
So really shouldn't have come as a surprise. The latest to spoil the contender fun was Chris, or as it was over the door, Christopher Buescher, which might have been a small surprise. But you and I have talked about this. Yeah. We've been watching Roush Fenway Keselowski racing. And kind of like what we figured throughout the course of the year, they were zeroing in on what it was that they needed to do.
Yep.
And I don't mean disrespect to Chris Buescher in this particular case. Mm-hmm. I thought if the winner was going to come from that camp, it was going to be Brad.
And for a little bit through that race Saturday, you thought it was going to be because he led a pretty decent little chunk in the late stages until he had that tire failure happen. Kind of foreshadowing there a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
But I'm not going to say they've turned the corner fully, but they've turned the corner and they're looking down the stretch in the other direction. They're not fully on the stretch past that curve yet.
No.
But they're looking down the straightaway. They may be in the last little fraction of the corner, but they're getting there. They've pleasantly surprised me in their turnaround.
This is why this team brought Brad Keselowski aboard.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. I mean, just to be real blunt, that's why they brought Brad on board, was to try and start zeroing in on trying to bring this organization back to where they once were.
See, I'll touch on this. Yesterday, while I was on the road, I was listening to one of the recent podcasts of the Dale Jr. Download, where he had Greg Biffle on.
Okay.
Greg Biffle essentially exposed a lot why Roush fell behind so far like they did.
Oh, okay.
He exposed quite a bit. They were bent, let's say it that way, on sticking with the people that they had versus changing with the technology. They didn't change with the technology. They was trying to do it with the people, and the technology outran the people, basically. And that's where they got so far behind.
That would do it. Buescher's Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing Team decided to go for it on that final pit stop. They went for a 2-tire change. Now, this is Bristol. That's a gamble. That's a pretty big gamble. It did put him out in front of the field, but in front of a whole lot of drivers who had changed 4, and usually that's bad news for the gambler, but no, not this time. Buescher, even with 2020 Cup champion Chase Elliott dogging him over the final 50 laps, he led the way all the way to the checkers, and in the process has helped the 2022 Cup Series tie the all-time record for different winners in a season in the modern era. Remember, that began in 1972. 19. And we still have how many races yet to go? Oh, that's right, 7.
7.
Yep. We got a pretty good chance of breaking that.
Yep.
And it might happen next weekend. It could happen this weekend, but the better chance of it, truth be told, is next weekend.
I don't see it happening this weekend, honestly, but next weekend, yes, I'm in full agreement on that one.
Elliott brought his car home in second, trailed by William Byron. Christopher Bell. Tell you what, Christopher Bell has kind of impressed for he's been very consistent so far in these playoffs. Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, A.J. Allmendinger, Cole Custer with a fairly rare appearance this year inside the top 10. Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. Harvick doing his level best, but a bad pit stop with a tire coming off as he was trying to leave the pits. Yeah, that pretty much doomed him. 10th place finish, not enough for the 2014 champ to advance to the round of 12. Eliminated along with him from title contention, Austin Dillon, Daniel Suarez, and for the first time, not advancing past the round of 16, Kyle Busch.
Well, 2 of these 3 races were nothing of his fault.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
It's kind of a head scratcher to me that he would have all of a sudden Toyota would have 2 engine failures in 3 races and 2 of them be on his car alone.
Yeah, I know. Strange
kind of
stuff.
Weird.
Then last Sunday, the NHRA took center stage for the first of their 6 Chase for the Championship events. This one taking place at Maple Grove Raceway in Reading, Pennsylvania. In Top Fuel came down to a face-off between Justin Ashley and Austin Prock. These two haven't faced off against each other a whole lot. Ashley, actually with the edge off of the light, came into that pairing 5-0 all-time against Prock. But this time, Austin Prock turning the tables, took the lead by the 330-foot mark, dead even by the 1/8 mark, got by him the slim win, 3.755 ET, 329.67 miles per hour. The margin of victory, about 2 feet for his second career national events win. 2 feet at 329.67 miles per hour.
And judging that I've seen these in person, that's about the width. That's about 2 front wings put side by side.
Not much.
No.
Real close race. Really good race.
Oh, it was.
Funny Car Finals came down to a battle between Tim Wilkerson and Robert Height. Height coming in with a major advantage all time in their head-to-heads, leading 34-21 and 2-0 in the finals. You can make that 3-0. Wilkerson, just way too anxious, badly redlighting by over 2/10. Gives the win to Height, who still put on a show. Gunned his ride to a 3.937 ET, 328.38 miles per hour. Marks his milestone 60th career win, his 7th win of the 2022 season. It puts himself in as the early title favorite. Erica Enders, Troy Coughlin Jr. were the finals in Pro Stock Car. Came in deadlocked at 4 wins each in prior meetings. Coughlin, though, 1-0 in the finals pairing, the one time that they did. Well, Enders has now tied that. Grabbed the lead off the light, never gave it up. Pushed her ride to a win of 6.582 at 209.72 miles per hour. That's her 7th win of 2022, marking her milestone 40th win of her career. Things are a little tighter in Pro Stock Car than they are over there in Funny Car, though. And it was Joey Gladstone taking on Angie Smith in Pro Stock Motorcycle. Smith was too hyped up, red-lighted that, and gave the win to Gladstone. He gunned his bike to a 6.835 ET, 193.93 miles per hour. That's his third win in the year 2022. Had a familiar pairing in the Constant Aviation Factory Stock Showdown. Aaron Stanfield taking on David Barton. Stanfield with the edge off the light, but Barton was leading at the 60-foot mark and never trailed from there. Pushed his ride to a 7.752 ET at 177.44 miles per hour. It was a matchup of Copo Camaros. It should just about clinch the division title for Barton. We'll detail that when we get to the points rundown, which will start right now with Top Fuel, where Justin Ashley has the early lead, but it's a slim 9 points over Brittany Force. Only 10 above Mike Salinas. Antron Brown's 54 down. Steve Torrance, who we are working on to get on the show, by the way, 56 in the hole and 5th. In the playoffs, Steve Torrance in 5th? We haven't heard this in 6 years. Huh. I get the funny feeling we haven't heard the last of him.
Never count those Capco cars out.
No. Robert Heitz up 81 points in Funny Car over Matt Hagan. Ron Capps 84 down. 97 down is John Force and Bob Tasca. 5th place, but already 106 points out of first. Robert Height may run off and hide on this one, as might Erica Enders. 81-point lead in Pro Stock Car over Greg Anderson. Kyle Koretsky 88 down. Troy Coughlin 91 down. Aaron Stanfield 91 down. And to Pro Stock Motorcycle, where Joey Gladstone's got a 29-point lead over Matt Smith. Birmingham's own Steve Johnson is 3rd now, 42 down. Just missed making the finals. Angie Smith trails by 49. Angel Sampey also 49 out. And as we noted, David Barton is out to a commanding lead in the Constant Aviation Factory Stock Showdown. His lead right now is 682 to 566 points over Bill Skillman. Aaron Stanfield's 3rd, 468. Here's the thing. They've got one more race this year. Remember, they don't run 24. They run, I think, actually about a third. I think it's 8 of the 24. Mm-hmm. Their final race of 2022 comes up at Texas in the NHRA Fall Nationals there. That's 3 weeks from now. All David Barton has to do is qualify for the final brackets, and he is the champion. That's it.
Goes to show you right there.
Man has had a good year. The racing this weekend is a little bit busier than last weekend. Obviously, we only had the one race Saturday, the one race Sunday. Today is the first of 3 events coming up this weekend. It is the Andes Frozen Custard 300 for the Xfinity Series at Texas Motor Speedway. PRN has the coverage. USA also on TV with 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central Time start. Camping World Drag Racing Series is actually up next. They're going to run the Beltway Carolina Nationals at ZMAG's Dragway near Charlotte, North Carolina. This is not a 4-wide, by the way. The 4-wide happened in the spring. This is only the side-by-side. It'll air live on Fox Sports 1, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. And then the Cup Series takes to Texas Motor Speedway for the final race of the weekend. Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 500 airs on USA. And PRN Radio begins 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central Time. As NBC shows, I got it wrong on the rundown. It's actually a golf tournament. Okay.
Yeah.
Camping World Truck Series and Formula One have the weekend off. By the way, we're going to get back to this whole situation about what NBC versus USA is showing when we're in the Cup Series playoffs. Because remember, television negotiations for the rights to air NASCAR are about ready to begin in earnest.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to get on my soapbox. I'm just going to let you know right now. Let's see. How early are we in? Wow, we're pretty early in, but I'll tell you what. We'll go ahead, take a short breather here, grab ourselves something to drink here, and stretch our legs for a moment. When we come back, we'll get into the racing news. We begin with Formula One because last week's silly season news, the big news came out of NASCAR. Formula One released their 2023 schedule, number one. And number two, silly season had a little bit of a, well, I say a little bit. It had a major wrench thrown into the works. So we'll get into that and try and sort it all out for you. When we come back, you are checking us out, and we thank you for doing it right here on CRN Live on YouTube.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. 2 tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. Steve West, Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers here with you on this Saturday, 1 week before Talladega weekend. We're amped up for it, no doubt about it. We'll probably talk about that a little bit. One. But this week, news-wise, we're going to start off with Formula One because they released their 2023 schedule on Tuesday. We've been talking about this ever since Liberty Media came on board as the commercial rights owners of Formula One. They have wanted to expand out the schedule because they honestly felt like that there was the market for it, and it is bearing out so far to be very true.
Yeah.
The popularity of Formula One worldwide, it has been, no disrespect to NASCAR or Indycar or the NHRA, but worldwide it has been the most popular motorsports series going because they do travel all around the world. Here in the United States, they're starting to see that popularity rise, although NASCAR is still the king of the mountain. But they've been fighting for this. And they understood, they looked through the whole thing, what they call the Concord Agreement, the most recent Concord Agreement between the teams, drivers, and Formula One, or Liberty Media, states the most races they can run in a year is 24. And they've been trying to build up towards that for, what, three or 4 years now?
At least, yeah.
Well, next year is slated to be a 24-race schedule. Season will begin March 5th, specifically in Bahrain, with the traditional summer break coming up in August. All right, so March 5th in Bahrain. 2 weeks later, they're going to run Saudi Arabia. Then they go to the first weekend in April, another 2 weeks. That'll be Australia. Here's the reason why we say they have planned a 24-race schedule. Because they have China on the schedule for 2 weeks after Australia. The thing that we don't know yet, since they haven't been on the schedule since 2020, is whether China is going to be ready to host said race.
That's why it's in pencil.
Yeah. If they don't, at this point in time, Formula One, Liberty Media, no one has said whether or not they're going to try and find a replacement for this race. One would presume that they would.
They should.
And probably will, but they haven't specified if they're going to and what that replacement race might be. Now, we can think this is a pretty wide open slate here because after China is on the schedule, and that's mid-April, the last weekend of April, they go into Baku, Azerbaijan. Now, that's Europe. It's very far eastern Europe, technically, but it is Europe. So they could go from Australia to Europe.
Could, yeah.
And find a race, maybe in Italy, maybe Germany, maybe Portugal, someplace that isn't currently on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wait. We'll play the waiting game and see, obviously, because they're going to be on China to try and get themselves figured out here pretty quick so that they can get figured out pretty quick where they're going to be in that mid-April race. After Baku, Azerbaijan, you go into May. They come to the United States for the first time. That's Miami, May 7th. Then they go back to Europe for Imola, Italy. That's the first of 2 races in that country for the year. And they'll wrap up the month. Last weekend of the month is going to be in Monaco. We'll get back to them. June kicks off in Spain, then back to North America for the Canadian Grand Prix 2 weeks later. Kind of like the people in NASCAR, as we talked about last week, somebody in Formula One might want to get a map.
Yeah.
Baku, Azerbaijan, United States, Italy, Monaco, Spain, Canada, and then 2 weeks later, Austria. Somebody tell me why they didn't go back-to-back Miami, Canada? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody else? Get him a globe. Anyway, so Canada, Austria, Britain, and then a week off before back-to-back weekends running in Hungary and Belgium, and that leads to our annual month off, basically, for most of the month of August. They'll be back in action August the 27th in the Netherlands, then Italy, a week off. Then they go to Asia. That's Singapore, the mid-September. Japan a week later. Then 2 weeks before the first ever race in Qatar. Okay. Another 2 weeks before coming back to North America. Here's where this actually kind of makes some sense. The first race in North America, October 22nd, is Texas, the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. The next weekend is Mexico. And then back to back to back, U.S., Mexico, Brazil. That's a fairly decent amount of travel, but it looks like they could probably get it done. And then they're going to take a week off between Brazil and the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix, which takes place November 18th/19th. Foreshadowing. That's a Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Here's a fun fact about something. We know that the NHRA, the NTT IndyCar Series schedule has not hit yet.
No.
But let's say it does align up with exactly how they had it last year.
Okay.
All three of the major series that we cover.
Yes.
On that same weekend, if they go back to Barber, May the 7th, the first weekend in May, like they did last year.
Yep.
All three series will be within a 1,400 mile span of each other.
Yeah. Pretty cool. After Las Vegas on November the 18th/19th, then they wrap up the year in Abu Dhabi, November the 26th, final race of the season. The FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, said of the schedule, quote, "The addition of new venues and the retention of traditional events underlines the FIA's sound stewardship of the sport. I am delighted that we'll be able to take Formula One's new era of exciting racing created by the FIA's 2022 regulations to a broader fan base in 2023. In framing the 2023 F1 calendar, the World Motorsport Council members have been very mindful of the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans." That's right. They're not running on the weekend that Le Mans runs. Good. Unlike IndyCar and NASCAR. That's that whole project or Garage 56 entry we were talking about last week. So there's the schedule. Again, somebody get somebody a globe over there, because that's a lot of travel, especially as we're talking about April into May. I mean, again, couldn't you have put Miami and Canada back to back? You've got Texas and Mexico, which are closer geographically than Miami and Canada.
Technically, yeah.
You can't tell me that you couldn't have put those two back to back and eliminated some of the travel costs.
True.
But, okay. And my other one, probably I would go into August and then into September. Your Netherlands and Italy, then you go to Singapore mid-September, Japan a week later. So you're talking about really the Pacific Rim before you kind of go Middle East and then North America. Why wouldn't you have gone Netherlands, Italy, Qatar, Singapore, Japan, North America?
Don't know. That's...
the things that I think about. I don't necessarily have a problem going Texas, Mexico, Brazil, then back to America. Gives you a little bit of separation between the two American-based races.
I guess it's a really good thing that they use 747s, 777 cargo jets, and ships.
Yeah.
To send stuff.
I guess. Might have also noted, again, Monaco indeed on the slate in its normal Memorial Day weekend slot, and there's some more good news there when it comes to that. Formula One and the Auto Club of Monaco, who are the promoters of the race, signed a 3-year deal. It's going to guarantee the Monaco Grand Prix will go on through the 2025 season. At least, I would imagine that'll probably continue on. I don't think they're going to let this thing die without a fight. I mean, this is let's face it, this is the crown jewel in Formula One.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Everybody wants to win the Monaco Grand Prix. They all want to win the British Grand Prix because, as we've mentioned, that is the first recognized Formula One sanctioned race. But Monaco is the crown jewel. Monaco is their Indy 500. It's their Daytona 500. It's their Indianapolis, the U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis for the NHRA.
Yep.
Everybody wants to win at Monaco. Michael Burry, who is the president of the Auto Club of Monaco, said, quote, in the interest of Formula One's World Championship and after several months of negotiations, we're proud to announce that we've signed a 3-year agreement with Formula One, keywords, and likely to be renewed. Now, we don't know the details on this, and Monaco was one of the more interesting deals when it came to that, because while many of these races pay multiple millions of dollars in rights fees to host, Monaco actually doesn't. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, that is weird.
So we don't know the details of this new deal. Maybe they're paying a little bit. Probably nowhere near even what any of the U.S.-based races are paying, and the U.S.-based races are paying a lot less than some of the ones that are being sanctioned by governments around the world. I was trying to think. Some of the ones that are like in the Middle East, the government sanctioning, the race promoting group is backed by the government, and the government effectively is paying the rights fees to host an F1 race, which is in some cases $50 and $60 million per year. I think the last we heard, Coda was on the hook to Formula One for 25 to 30 mil.
Yeah, something like that. I remember hearing that number.
So the U.S. situation is obviously a little bit different because the U.S. government isn't paying for it really. In the case of Texas, there is a fund based upon the likelihood of attendance, and it's difficult to detail the whole thing, but the state government of Texas isn't necessarily funding this. Yeah. They're getting the money from hosting major sporting events.
Yeah.
Be it golf tournaments or tennis tournaments or big races like NASCAR's All-Star race last year, this weekend, the Formula One race. They're taking extra tax monies that they get from that, and they're using that to fund this particular separate governmental entity, and I can't remember what the name of it is. It's like the Texas Sports Council or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
Honestly, since I don't have it in front of my face, it's not in my mind. But that's where the money comes to go and do a hosting rights fee for a Formula One race like this. That's basically it. So it's kind of strange. I'm not sure how Vegas is doing it. Quite frankly, I'm not sure how Miami's doing it. We haven't found out how they're paying for those particular F1 rights.
Yeah,
because it changes from one to the next here in the United States because, again, we don't have necessarily government backing on this.
Even though we know Stephen Ross of the Dolphins put up the money to build the track.
Sure.
It's very, very doubtful he's putting up the hosting fees as well.
Certainly not all by himself.
Yeah. He
might have a part in it, but not all by himself. Meanwhile, then we get into the situation where we're talking about seats. And here's where we start what is a quasi-confusing, silly season over in Formula One, because Haas F1, as we kick off with them, continues to state that they're in no hurry to finalize their driver lineup for next year, specifically the seat that could be left open by Mick Schumacher. I use the word could very pointedly. Although the driver has very few options available at this time, realistically, it's only Haas, Alpine, and maybe Williams. We'll get back to that. His deal with Ferrari does come to an end at the end of the 2022 season, and he has scored points this year, unlike his rookie season of 2021, but really that can be more chalked up to the car last year than the driver. This season, he sits 15th overall in points. He's racked up 12. That's 10 points fewer than his teammate, Kevin Magnussen. But despite Haas's team principal, Gunther Steiner, and Ferrari officials complaining a little bit about Mick Schumacher's inconsistency, Ferrari's team boss, Mattia Binotto, says that he is planning on sitting down with Mick before the end of this season to talk with him about his future. Binotto said to media, quote, "With Mick, as we said at the start of the season, it's important for him this year to improve. We will, in a few races, sit down with him, make a balance of the season. We'll do that as well as together with Haas and decide his best future. Should Schumacher decide to leave the fold, Ferrari is very high on another driver in their driver academy, a kid by the name of Robert Schwartzman. He's a 23-year-old who has impressed in Formula 3 and Formula 2, and apparently during his test and simulator sessions. But let's face it, Formula 3, Formula 2, test and simulator, not exactly like being on the track with 19 other high-level Formula 1 drivers.
Bingo.
Well, maybe 18.
Or 17.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, or 17.
So Ferrari hasn't given up on Mick Schumacher. And from everything that I've heard, Mick Schumacher seems to be interested in starting to step out on his own because, again, we've talked about this. He's looking at Ferrari, where his dad really made some pretty big marks. But there's really not much of an opening there in any time in the near future. And he wants to see what he can do. But at the same time, we just mentioned it. There's only a couple of seats realistically available next year. His options are very, very few.
Extremely, because I saw a graphic a couple of days ago. Here we go. 23 driver lineup. The only current seats technically still open. You got one open at Alfa Romeo, the one at Williams, one at Haas, and one at Alpine. 4 seats. 16 to the 20 are confirmed already.
And remember, Alfa Romeo is linked to Ferrari as well.
True.
So that's kind of a sideways move if Mick Schumacher decided he wanted to leave Haas F1 and go to Alfa Romeo. You're not changing much, if anything at all.
Yes, lateral move.
So really the only moves that might change your career, I'm not necessarily going to say for the better, would be to Alpine or to Williams. We'll continue on that because another driver who's trying to figure out his future is Daniel Ricciardo. He knows he is out at McLaren at the end of the year, but he has no ride for 2023 at this time. He could accept a ride at his old team, Alpine, formerly Renault, could move to Haas, maybe even Williams, or as he noted, he might actually potentially take a year off. The Aussie native said that it all depends on if the offer to him is appealing enough. Ricciardo said, quote, "I've certainly accepted if I'm not going to be on the grid next year. I'm okay with that. I've accepted that I'm not going to be able to do everything, or my team's not going to do everything just to put me on the grid if it's not right or it doesn't make sense. If I am on the grid, I want to know that it's a place that I can enjoy it and feel like I can thrive. In other words, have a chance to actually claim points and maybe even a win." Ricciardo said, "I would like to be in an environment that I feel like I can thrive in. And like I said, I don't want to jump into a car for the sake of it." Now, kind of like Haas F1, Alpine seems to be pretty happy waiting on Red Bull's decision as to what they're going to do about one Pierre Gasly. What we know is this. Colton Herta, not an option. More on that in a moment. It seems that they are either going to have to sign Nick DeVries to run the AlphaTauri racer. DeVries is also being courted by Williams, by the way, after scoring points in his debut with them back in Italy. So Haas F1, Alpine are playing the waiting game. Williams and Red Bull are keeping their cards pretty close to the chest. They're barely hinting at what's next for either one. The one thing that we do know, officially now, Williams has a seat open. We speculated that probably Nicholas Latifi is on his way out in his final year. The team confirmed that just yesterday. Latifi is running his final races throughout the rest of this year with Williams. And this could actually create something of a bidding war. Going back to Nick DeVries, kind of seems to be the flavor of the month here. Williams, Alpine says they're kind of interested. AlphaTauri continues. We continue to get leaks about that they're interested in trying to bring Nick DeVries on board. This whole thing has kind of led to some court battles. Remember this whole situation between Chip Ganassi Racing and McLaren Racing when it came to IndyCar?
Yep.
Kind of the same thing. We're trying to figure out, they had to send it over to some contract negotiation team that nobody knew that the FIA actually had. Here's the situation, though. Mm-hmm. Nick DeVries actually doesn't have an F1 contract. He's a development driver for Williams.
Right.
But just because you're a development driver is not the same as having a Formula One contract. So at this point in time, if AlphaTauri / Red Bull, remember that's the parent company, wants to get in a bidding war with Alpine, who has already lost out on the kid that they thought that they were going to be going into the future with, Oscar Piastri, and Williams want to get involved, and Williams keeps saying, hey, we want to start to really make a move towards, if not the mid-range, get back to our old championship winning ways 30, 40 years ago. they think Nick DeVries is it. If all three of these teams are hell-bent, well, I'll say it, what the heck, we're on the internet, hell-bent for leather on getting Nick DeVries, Nick DeVries is the person that's in the catbird seat because now he can go, not enough money, what else you got?
Yeah. Hey, he's definitely got all the leverage right now for sure in the entire situation, no matter which team wants him, because it seems like now with him coming out and getting in Alex Albon's car a couple weeks ago, scoring you right out of the gate in his very first race.
Absolutely.
That, like you said, that puts you as the flavor of the week, flavor of the month, flavor of the year. He's the hot commodity. So, yeah, I mean, he can pretty much say, name your price. I'm going to name my price. If you want me, come get me.
Yep. Now, Williams, and all these teams have other options. It's not like all the eggs are in the Nick DeVries basket here. Williams, for example, should DeVries choose to leave the Williams organization and go elsewhere, they do have a kid who they're pretty high on. He actually has won in Formula 2 this year, and get this, he's an American-born driver. His name is Logan Sargent. He's part of the Williams Driver Academy, said to be very, very popular and highly thought of within the halls of the Williams Racing organization. He's also going to be the non-F1 driver that Williams is set to put in the car for the FP1 or first practice session at COTA coming up next month. They have to do that by the Formula One rules that we've been detailing over the last couple of weeks here. Latifi, meanwhile, who has been with the team since 2000, came on board with the help of some of the sponsors that he brought in, but he's only scored 7 championship points during that time, and none of those came this year. You're only going to get so much time, ladies and gentlemen. Warning to Jimmy Johnson. Oh, foreshadowing. As for Herta, he has had the chance to work through some of the drama that had been the idea that Red Bull might actually officially seek an exemption from the FIA. Initially, they were wanting the FIA to grant an F1 super license exemption, even though Herta only has 32 of the 40 points needed over the last 3 years to attain one. This was kind of based upon the idea of the FIA's own exemption policy, where it, for all intents and purposes, counted 2020's COVID season as the exception. Yesterday, however, the FIA confirmed officially that Herta will not qualify for an F1 super license, as they were unwilling to grant said exemption, despite the fact that, truth be told, had IndyCar raced in 2020, it's a pretty good bet Herta probably would have attained the 8 points he needed to get to 40.
Probably.
Soapbox number 1. I'm going to have a couple.
Oh, I've got a big one coming up.
I talked about this during my weekly or my daily show during the week, Monday through Friday, in Birmingham on Talk 99.5. I got to thank Richard Dixon, Valerie Vining very much for giving me my own segment, and I took the time to actually mention this particular problem during a segment that we call Steve's Turn. And here's the thing. Liberty Media is an American-based company.
Mm-hmm.
As we mentioned just a few moments ago, they are the commercial rights owners of Formula One. They are the ones that have gone out and said, we want a bigger presence in the United States. They were happy to make sure to keep COTA, which started in 2012. They brought in Miami for this year, have renewed it for next year, and oh, by the way, we now have a third American-based race next year in Las Vegas, using part of the Strip, the famed Las Vegas Strip, as the racetrack in a very weird schedule. Again, we're going to get to that. But for all of this bluster, all of this talk about wanting to be more involved and have a bigger profile in the United States of America for the American-based Liberty Media, what's the one thing that you've got? Haas F1. That's it. The FIA has been not very secretive in saying we're pretty much not all that willing to go let Andretti Autosport, another American-based team, come into our little fun club. And on top of that, you've got an American-based driver who, even if they were unwilling to see the FIA give Colton Herta an exemption, almost to a person from who I've heard from, The team principals who have talked about Colton Herta have all said, we think he would be competitive right off the bat. You could have not just one, but two American-based teams and an American-based driver. Now, why am I so hyped up about this? Just because the ownership is an American company, truth be told, really doesn't mean a whole lot. They have an American-based team in Haas F1, but they don't have an American driver. You want the United States to truly get behind somebody in Formula One, it's going to have to be the driver with an American flag on their chest or their sleeve on their uniform. And that will make them want to do it. Witness the Olympics, which, yeah, the ratings have gone down here most recently. I get it. But the United States, even if they're only watching to see who won a particular event, maybe they only get it on the crawl on ESPN, or they get an update the morning after on whatever network. But they're always curious, how did the American person do in said event that had their medal round yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
See where I'm going with this? If I'm Liberty Media, I'm calling up the FIA and going, hey, McFly, we could use an American-based driver here, and this kid was the great hope. No disrespect to Logan Sargent. You think you might give him an exemption just so that we could actually get an American-based driver who, I don't know, might actually have a chance to go score points, maybe even win a race or two?
Yep.
It's AlphaTauri.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Have we seen AlphaTauri in the winner's circle?
Yep.
Yes, we have.
You have.
Liberty
Absolutely.
Media is dropping the ball on this one, and the FIA is dropping the ball on this one.
Big time.
Soapbox number one. Anyway, Herta got to talking, and he talked to motorsport.com. He said, quote, I can understand the FIA's position. I just feel that IndyCar is underrepresented in the super license point structure. I can see that. But from their point of view, with the current point structure, I get it. I don't want to come in as an exception. Very professional way of looking at it. That's the proper words.
Oh, for sure.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know whether he's saying that when the cameras and the microphones aren't on him. I mean, the kid could be bouncing off the walls in his house, for all I know, very, very ticked off. Or that may be actually how he feels. But either way, he put the uber professional face on it, and I love it. And that's the way he should have done it. And that is only going to help him as we go further on.
Yep.
But we talked about the F1 super license structure. You need 40 points, right? If you win the F2 title, you get those 40 points. If you win the IndyCar title, you get those 40 points. Here's the thing. If you place second or third in Formula 2, you still get 40 points. But if you place second in IndyCar, you get 30. If you place third in IndyCar, you only get 20.
Uh-huh.
Colton Herta's right. IndyCar is highly underrepresented in that, and another person agrees with that, specifically Red Bull team principal Christian Horner. Shed a little bit of light on exactly how hard the process of moving from IndyCar to Formula One is. He's not a fan of it. He, kind of like Herta, said Red Bull set to respect FIA's decision on Herta, but then added, quote, it is something that needs looking at because it shouldn't be so hard for drivers to transition from America's Premier Series into Formula One.
He's right.
Thank you, Christian Horner. Well said, and I hope you get more backing on that. Anyway.
Yeah.
While one-seated AlphaTauri is potentially open, pending on what happens with Pierre Gasly, of course, the seat does seem to be a little bit up for grabs. However, the other driver, Yuki Tsunoda, he's going to be with the team through at least 2023. He's part of the Red Bull driver development program, has sponsor backing from their engine supplier / advisor Honda as well. Next year is going to mark his third year with the team. In the announcement, by the way, no mention of Gasly or the second team car. And then there's this.
Here's my soapbox time, boys and girls.
Tell you what, when we come back, we'll detail the schedule for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. If you were thinking about going, foreshadow, a little bit of a hint. I hope you're a night owl, because you're going to need to be. We'll give you all the details and get on our respective soapboxes when we come back. You're watching/listening to CRN Live on YouTube.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show. Steve West, Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers. Well, 2 of us are fully here. 1 of us is about half here. Just going to say. We're wishing all the best for John.
Partially here.
Yeah.
It's all good.
If you were thinking about heading to Las Vegas for that first ever 2023 race on the part of, at least, the Vegas Strip, again, we hope you're a night owl. The Las Vegas Grand Prix is going to be held at night. Now, that's not a terribly unusual thing. It's not common throughout the course of the schedule, but a night race has happened within Formula One.
Now,
I'm talking local time.
7:30 green flag, 8 o'clock green flag.
Yeah.
Not terribly uncommon.
No. Again, 2 or 3 races a year generally happen under the lights wherever they happen to be.
For our East Coast friends, here you go.
Yeah. Start time for the race, 10 p.m. local time.
Pacific.
That means 1 a.m. Eastern, midnight Central Time, start time for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. By far, the latest scheduled start time for an F1 race in its local time zone. And that means that it'll air in Britain at 6 a.m.?
approximately. Yeah, approximately.
No, I get it. Las Vegas is a place that's open 24/7. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. But, dang. 10 p.m., which means it won't be done until about midnight. And they're closing off part of the strip on Saturday night to do it.
Lord, it's mad again. Why do these people in the F1 do not use their brain? It is... I actually seen this quote from an F1 official on social media. Well, we want to, and I'm going to try to do this in the best European accent that I can.
Oh.
Forgive me if I get it wrong.
He's Southern European.
Southern European. Well, we just want to give our European fans a chance to have a cup of coffee and maybe have a bagel or get some tea, just like our American fans do. How about this? How about run the race at a civilized,
local,
acceptable local time?
If you wanted to start it at 8 o'clock p.m. local time.
And give them a dose of the medicine we have.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about races, especially the ones in Asia, that go live here in the United States about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Turnabout's fair play, boys and girls.
Let's just say for fun here. Okay. Right now, the good part about my phone is it's got a world clock on it. So I can type in any city I want to in the world.
Bragger.
And we know what time it is.
Bragger.
8:56 a.m. Central Standard Time here in the United States of America.
Okay.
In London, right now, 2:56 p.m. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2.
Yeah.
6 hours.
6 hours ahead of us. 5 hours ahead of Eastern Time.
Okay, so if we're tipping off at 12 o'clock midnight, basically Sunday morning, 12 o'clock Sunday morning, 6 a.m. in London.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we back it up to 7 o'clock, run it in the twilight into the night, and let the ones in London, Denmark,
even Germany,
Amsterdam, Germany, France, let them set up at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning like we have to do, which some of us don't do, but, you know,
it's true.
The hardcore fans. And have a cup of the tea that we have there, chaps. That is astounding.
Now, that being said, if you are the night owl who would like to go and see this live, if you'd like to pre-register for tickets, that's right, if you'd like to pre-register for tickets, you can go on to f1lasvegasgp.com. Fans are being asked for a $7.77 donation to the Las Vegas Grand Prix Association. Again, f1lasvegasgp.com. It's also the official site of all things related to the race. I kind of get where they're going with the whole $7.77. I think it's cute.
Yeah.
And it's a donation. It's not like you must, but they're asking you for you to pre-register to be in line to get the tickets.
Yeah. It's I hate to see what the actual prices are when they do come out, because you're probably going to have to take out a mortgage and a loan at the same time.
Well, I mean, we talked about it. We looked up the prices of some of the paddocks, some of the grandstand seating areas at the Miami Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
We're talking 4 figures for a ticket.
Uh-huh.
A seat. 1,000 plus. Las Vegas seems to be willing to drop that price some. How much? Don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still thinking $500 to $750 per.
Uh-huh.
For a decent vantage point.
At least.
John?
I think they'll drop it $777.
It does seem to be appropriate.
True.
Still, not exactly what anyone here would call cheap. Let's go from Formula One to IndyCar as we put the 2022 IndyCar season further in our rearview mirror reports on IndyCar.com. Kind of actually put the season in historical perspective. They noted that with 5 drivers coming into the final race this year that mathematically were alive for the title, that was actually the most drivers eligible going into the final race of the year since 2003.
Wow.
Who knew that? Over the course of the year, the points lead changed hands no less than 7 times amongst 5 drivers: Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden, Alex Palou, and Marcus Ericsson. Also noted 9 drivers claimed at least 1 win. That's only 2 shy of the all-time number for any IndyCar season. Apparently this year is the year for different winners.
True.
Except in Formula One, Max Verstappen. We also noted that Will Power claimed his record-breaking 68th career pole. That sets a new mark for the series. We mentioned it because it was part of his championship win. He claimed the pole for the race and bettered the legend, Mario Andretti, who had 67. If you go back to Scott Dixon's win in Nashville, marked his 53rd career win. That moved him ahead of Mario Andretti into second on the all-time IndyCar win list. Sorry, Mario, it was kind of a hard year for you, wasn't it?
Yep.
The series also welcomed back a capacity crowd for the Indy 500. First time that's happened since 2019. Stupid COVID. Also noted that the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix drew another huge crowd in year number 2, and said that the return of Iowa Speedway for a doubleheader weekend after a year off was a big success despite an abnormally hot Iowa weekend weather-wise. On TV, as noted, the ratings continue to trend upwards. NBC Sports reports that 1.3 million viewers on average per race was what they attained, highest in NBC Sports history for the series. Half of the races bringing in over 1 million people watching on television, the highest since 2008. NBC choosing to air 14 of the 17 on the main network helped that out. Hint. I'm letting that sit for a second, hoping that somebody in NBC just listened to what I just said. I'll repeat it, though. NBC chose to air 14 of the 17 IndyCar races on the main network, which helped NBC Sports attain the highest per average race viewership in their history with the series.
Think about it.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah, something else that we're going to talk about here a little bit later, too, that I know we will. That is alarming from last weekend.
25 cars ran every single race in 2022, and it appears that we could have 29 or maybe even 30 full-time cars for 2023. 3 teams, Arrow, McLaren, SP, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and Andretti Autosport, have all unveiled plans and or broken ground for new race shops in and around Indianapolis as well. So, yeah, IndyCar doing very well for itself.
It's digging.
As for Arrow, McLaren, SP, however, they needed a new team president because early this week, Tuesday specifically, Taylor Kiel officially resigned that position effective immediately. An Indianapolis native, Kiel was the team president over the past 2 years. This past year, the team won 4 races and claimed 6 pole positions. On social media, he stated, quote, "As I step away, I'm most proud that we've grown this team into an organization able to fight for championships and wins each week. I now look forward to spending time with my own growing family and an exciting new chapter ahead. What that new chapter will hold, he did not detail. We wish him all the best." Now remember, McLaren, be it in IndyCar or be it in Formula One, has been arguably the most aggressive team out there when it comes to going after drivers.
Yep.
And, well, during a situation where Zach Brown officially introduced Brian Barnhart as the newest member of the organization, they also got to talking about making a phone call. We'll tell you about that phone call here in a second. First of all, Barnhart, very much a racing veteran. Stepping in to quell some of the reaction of losing Taylor Kiel as the president. He's not officially been named the president. Barnhart comes over with Alexander Rossi from Andretti Autosport, where Barnhart was Rossi's strategist on that car. Barnhart, though, in this case, will report directly to Brown. So for all intents and purposes, he might as well be the new Taylor Kiel.
Pretty much, yeah.
Also, probably likely didn't hurt in the situation of going back to the phone call situation that the two-time Cup Series champion named Kyle Busch happened to mention during his time when he was being announced as the new driver at Richard Childress Racing that his new boss was going to allow him to do something that his old boss, Joe Gibbs, wasn't willing to let him do, and that is attempt the double. The Memorial Day double of running the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day, and Kyle Busch put out a small but none too subtle hint that said, any Chevrolet teams interested, I've got my phone in my hand. Effectively, that's a paraphrase.
And who was the first one that I said last week?
Arrow McLaren SP.
And who's picked up the phone?
Arrow McLaren SP.
Ding.
Probably didn't hurt that, again, the two-time Cup Series champion hails from Las Vegas. That's where Sam Schmidt, he's the S in Arrow McLaren SP, hails from. And Schmidt noted how much Kyle's brother Kurt, also a previous Cup champion, remember, performed when he raced his one race for Andretti Autosport back in 2014 when he finished 6th and won that year's Indy 500 Rookie of the Year. Now, will Kyle be running the Indy 500 in 2023? We don't know. Stay tuned. We'll let you know. But I get the funny feeling that if Arrow McLaren Racing SP has their way, there'll be a 4 cars running their banner at Indy.
And the sponsor that I saw linked to this possible deal, keyword possible deal, is pretty well known around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and in Midwestern Motorsports because you just save big money at this store. Menards. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
I'm pretty sure John Menard will stroke the check if they can say, yeah, we'll put him in the car. Here you go.
I don't think he'd have a problem with that at all.
No.
Not at all.
Nope.
And then there's John's favorite IndyCar driver,
Hey.
Jimmy Johnson. Over at Chip Ganassi Racing, they're still waiting word on whether the 7-time Cup champion Jimmy Johnson is going to do next year. He did see an improvement from his rookie year, 2021 to 2022. Not that there wasn't much room to go butt up. But overall, let's face it, he was really nowhere close to the threat to win almost every race that he was when he was driving a stock car. Johnson's now 46. Something he's not done yet and will come back for another full year. But there are also some that firmly believe he's set to move on, say, for maybe just the Indy 500. So what is Johnson going to do? Well, Johnson got to talking to NBC Sports just before the season ender a couple of weeks ago and admitted this, quote, this one has been harder for sure. It's really tough for anyone right now coming along without testing, with short practice sessions. And if you don't come up through the junior categories in any given sport, I think you're further behind than you realize. That's the situation I'm in. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I had a great career in NASCAR. I got plenty of test time then. I raced the junior ranks, worked my way up. To make the switch now from the top of NASCAR to the top of open wheel, it's a bigger gap than I first thought. Yeah.
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
A little bit.
He admits that he has gotten some good news from his sponsor, Carvana, who is set to sponsor him in 2023 in IndyCar, but Johnson still yet unwilling to commit to anything right now. He said, quote, I know that opportunity that I have in IndyCar way earlier than I have in any other year. I'm very thankful to be in this position. I don't have any pressure from the team or the sponsor, so I'm going to soak it all in and see what I want to do. And then he detailed things a bit more after thinking a moment and said, quote, I can go on record to say this year has been more of a time commitment on a full-time schedule basis than I expected. I don't know where my IMSA plans sit. I don't know where my IndyCar plans sit. I want to get to the 24 Hours Le Mans. There are other things I want to do as well and see what works. I'm going to go through my normal process. I'm going to take some time, digest it, think about it, meet with Team Johnson and see what works. But the good thing is Carvana sees how important this is all about and wants to support me in whatever way that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a good safety net. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
And he's put in a pretty unique position. But again, if I'm Carvana and if I'm Chip Ganassi Racing, based on his first 2 years, and I get it, he himself admits he was behind the 8 ball because he didn't come up through the ranks and he's unfamiliar with IndyCar. But we said it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't you doing the oval track races? You know, the ones that are on the tracks that you're most familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
which would give you a little bit of a leg up in figuring out what these IndyCar cars can and can't do. Instead, you shunned all the oval races in your first year in favor of doing nothing but the road and street course races, and you put yourself even further behind that 8 ball than I think you would have if you had run the first full year.
Substantially behind it.
And John, I know you're probably, not probably, you are the biggest critic of Jimmy Johnson on this show. And I can tell you even agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Had he not ditched the ovals, he'd be in a much better position right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Probably.
get into a situation that you know, even if not necessarily the car, you know the track. Talking Texas, talking Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think where else they went.
Iowa?
They go there in his rookie year?
No, they did not. No. Gateway.
Tracks that you have raced on or tracks that are similar, Gateway, to tracks that you have raced on. You know braking points from stock car, which don't necessarily translate one-to-one. I get it. But you know the braking points. You know the ins and outs of these particular tracks. You know their personalities. And then you get into an IndyCar, and it helps you get a better feel because now you have a baseline, and you can figure out whether you need to back off earlier, whether you need to brake earlier, brake later, back off later, whatever it is. But you got a baseline, which means you're a leg up over where you are at virtually any other track. Because the truth of the matter is, when it comes to the road and street courses, IndyCar and NASCAR don't really cross over that much.
Nope. Not even close. Not even close.
We saw what he did at Texas. We saw what he did in Iowa this year. And we were like, this is what we were talking about in 2021.
Yep.
So, Jimmy, whatever you do, we wish you nothing but the best. But you should have been running the oval courses.
Should have.
From year one, from the get-go. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll switch to straight line racing. We got to talk a little bit about the NHRA. This will be Matt's ability to do soapbox number 2. And it'll be kind of that whole situation about NBC and the IndyCar ratings that we were talking about. Yeah.
Sound the alarm.
We'll be right back to try and give the folks at NBC a little bit of a lesson in programming. When we come back, you're watching and listening to CRN Live on YouTube.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back in. Steve West, along with Matt Nicholson and producer John Myers here on this Saturday morning, 1 week away from Talladega. They're running at Texas in NASCAR. They're running in Charlotte in the NHRA, and it's NHRA news is where we are right now. And you got to admit, no, it's not an outright win, but the numbers from last weekend's television ratings are about as good as a win for the NHRA up against the biggest racing series in all of the United States of America as you could possibly get without actually having the numbers give you the win.
Uh-huh.
And depending on how you look at it, NBC is to thank or blame, even though they didn't air against each other. Thing is, even though they now have the National Football League, yeah, that's right, the NFL, the king of all sports here in the United States of America, Fox decided to take the finals of the NHRA's first Chase for the Championship race last weekend, Reading, Pennsylvania, and put them on Fox, butting them up against an NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
Over on NBC, despite having one of the more popular races on the schedule, the Bristol Night Race, on Saturday night, on their part of the schedule, they chose to put the Bristol Night Race on the cable network USA in favor of doing repeats of old programming on the main network.
Yep.
The result is, for all intents and purposes, according to the official television ratings service Nielsen, a tie. The Cup Series, according to Nielsen, drew a 1.07 share of the audience, bringing in about 1.78 million viewers. That's down from last year's airing of this particular race on the now defunct NBC Sports Network. That was a 1.2 share and 2.2 million pairs of eyes. Compare that to Sunday afternoon and the NHRA Finals on Fox. Remember the numbers I just gave you? 1.07 share of the audience, 1.78 for Saturday night on USA, correct?
Uh-huh.
Sunday afternoon, the NHRA Finals, with either an NFL lead or an NFL follow, depending on whether you're on the East or the West Coast, pulled a 1.0 share and just under 1.7 million people watching.
That is...
Statistically,
yeah.
You can call it a tie.
Yeah.
This, before Matt gets on his soapbox, marks a major increase of the same race's finals ratings over last year. That garnered a 0.8 share and 1.45 million people watching. Now, here's my minor soapbox before I give way to Matt's major soapbox. If I was the people in the NASCAR headquarters in charge of media relations, I'd be, sorry kids who are watching, pissed at NBC for relegating one of the biggest Cup Series races of the year to USA when they easily could have put it on the main network NBC. And by the way, I'd be remembering that for the 2024 rights negotiations when it came to television, because if I'm the NHRA's front offices, I'm thrilled beyond belief to have the partnership I do with Fox. And we've talked about the difference between NASCAR's partnership with Fox on just the Cup Series alone, and then the second half of the year when it's on USA. Fox will put a few Cup Series races on Fox Sports 1, but the overwhelming majority of the Cup Series schedule, the first half of the year, Fox's half of the year, it ends up on the main network. But somehow NBC seems to relegate more than half of their schedule to the cable. To Matt.
You just covered most of that right there. But in quite all complete honesty, NBC Network, the entire channel, has no excuse whatsoever of why you put your what could arguably be outside of the Daytona 500. I'm going to even say the Coca-Cola 600 And I'm going to throw Talladega in too, because
Sure.
Talladega is a highly viewed race consistently every single year for both events.
Sure.
But for your playoff scenario, your playoff section of the schedule, your final 10 races,
Mm-hmm.
if you can put 14 of 17 events of the NTT IndyCar series on the main NBC network channel,
Yep.
you have no excuse as to why you can't put the full slate of the 10 race playoffs of NASCAR, which, depending on who you're talking to anymore, is arguably your biggest motorsports series in the United States of America. Why are you not doing that?
Excuse me.
Because now you've let the straight liners of the NHRA come up and they're nipping at your heels like a little chihuahua. When you're running down the hall like, hey, we're right here, we're right here, we're right here, we're right here, we're right here. Don't let us pass you. I'm afraid they're about to pass you.
Yep. And this is, and I get it. I mean, NASCAR is going through a transition period, and there are some people, quite frankly, they believe, for example, that stock car racing died with Dale Earnhardt. No. Sorry, it didn't.
Yeah.
To you, it did. These are some of the same people who said the same thing when Richard Petty retired. Okay, but the thing about it is there was a time before Dale Earnhardt, there was a time after Dale Earnhardt. There was a time before Richard Petty, not much, because Richard Petty was in real early. And there's a time after Richard Petty. There's a time before Jeff Gordon and a time after Jeff Gordon. The most popular drivers of today will sooner or later give way, and they'll be replaced by popular drivers of years from now.
Yep.
The sport goes on. It changes. Life changes. Things do change, whether you like it or not. Sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. I get it. But the thing about this is, NASCAR has been, let's see, this is 2022, for about 40 to 45 years now, undisputedly the king of American motorsports on television.
Yep.
You can trace it back to the famed 1979 Daytona 500.
For sure.
When everybody finally got on CBS the first ever flag-to-flag live coverage, because the East Coast, basically from Georgia and Alabama all the way up in New England, got slammed with a snowstorm.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have anything better to do. Wait a minute, what's this? Let's go check this new thing out that we haven't checked out. And then all of a sudden ESPN comes into existence, the explosion of cable, and ESPN did it fantastically in the 1980s. Going into the 80s and then into the early 90s, by and large, ESPN, and to some extent TBS/TNT, had a lot to do with how NASCAR, specifically the Cup Series, exploded in popularity. Yeah, everything kind of drifted back, but again, considering where they went from basically not having any live flag-to-flag coverage from 1978 to being arguably the second most popular sport in the United States of America somewhere around, 30 years ago, 1992, you figure that they were going to kind of ease back a little bit. And they have. And the ratings, last week not included, overall, cumulatively throughout the course of a year, tends to put the Cup Series on even keel, not with the NFL and not with college football. Those are king and prince. No doubt about it. Then you got this battle below them. It's the Cup Series, it's Major League Baseball, it's the NBA.
Yep.
And I'll tell you this right now, the Cup Series tends to, on a pretty regular basis, beat out the NBA and Major League Baseball for an event. I'm not talking World Series.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take World Series versus a race at Texas. I'm talking about now. By the way, congratulations to Albert Pujols, who becomes only the fourth player in Major League history to hit 700 home runs and only the third to do it without the help of steroids. I think it's great.
Sure. Absolutely.
But what were the ratings for the St. Louis Cardinals game last night where he smacked 2 home runs in 2 back-to-back innings to get to home run number 700 in his career?
Mm-hmm.
Probably nowhere near as good as what happened at Bristol last weekend when it was on USA. Because the Cup Series generally is the 3rd most popular sport on television in the United States of America. But because NBC, for all intents and purposes, threw away arguably one of the most entertaining races that you're going to get in the year, the Bristol Night Race, and Fox, realizing they had an opening to not necessarily compare apples to apples, but put the NHRA on a bigger audience map by putting it up against their NFL coverage. Now, all of a sudden, more people know about the NHRA, and NBC is over there repeating reality shows and old Saturday Night Live not funny bits. Sorry, folks. If I'm NASCAR, and I'm not,
We'd like to be.
I'd like to give some people in NASCAR a couple of hints, subtly, with a sledgehammer. Because in your television rights, you're being treated wrong. Badly wrong.
Oh, good land, Jess.
This is something that is broken, that needs to be fixed, NASCAR. Stop trying to fix stuff that ain't broken and go fix the stuff that is.
Where have we heard that before? Oh, wait. Yeah.
Here?
Quite a few times. But there's no reason that on a Saturday night, as you said, arguably one of the more entertaining races of the year, that it should not be on the main network getting in front of maximum people. You're on a second-rate cable network. Let's call it that.
Yeah. I mean, even if it is one of the generally more higher-rated cable networks, it's still cable.
Yeah.
Versus the main broadcast network.
Yeah. That little chihuahua known as NHRA is biting a little bit harder and a little bit faster.
Yep.
Because whoever decided on Fox to put them directly behind the NFL, genius move.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Genius move.
Absolute stroke of genius. Congratulations to Fox. NBC, either get your head out of your collective hindquarters, or if I'm NASCAR, I'm seriously talking about going someplace else. And CBS and ABC, ESPN, the door's open.
Considering that, pretty sure SRX has done fairly well.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
To be a just your basic Saturday night short track series airing on national television.
Mm-hmm. Saturday night prime time.
Saturday night prime time.
They're getting every single bit of the numbers that we just talked about for the NHRA and NASCAR from last weekend. Every bit of it.
I'm pretty sure George Pine and all the guys at CBS wouldn't mind pulling the trigger on that one, and because, and I'm fairly certain as well that one Alan Bestwick would probably jump right back at it. I'm pretty sure he would. Because I would love to hear a team Alan Bestwick and, I don't know,
Lindsay Zarniak's there.
Zarniak would be a good pre-race person.
Yes, she would.
Like Shannon Spake and Caitlin Vincey and can't say Marty Schneider. I'm talking about from the female
side. Yeah,
Nicole Briscoe,
Jamie Little.
Yeah, she would be a good addition.
She would. Yep. And if ABC ESPN got it, I mean, obviously Nicole Briscoe's your perfect pre-race host.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
studio host on that. NBC, you're stubbing your toe.
They're doing a little more than stubbing their toe.
And NASCAR, you're letting them. Stop it.
Yeah.
Back to the NHRA. Again, congratulations to them. I think it's fantastic for them. When you have, by the way, competed at the highest levels of things like Nitro Rallycross, which is a series you started, then you also raced at the top levels of NASCAR divisions, what's now, for example, the ARCA Menard Series East and West, the Camping World Truck Series, and Xfinity Series. And oh, by the way, not only have you won titles in Nitro Rallycross, but American Rally, Rally America and the AMA Motocross and Supercross Series. What do you have next on your table? Well, since we're talking about Travis Pastrana, who seems to live on adrenaline, well, you just got to go faster, right? Well, you can't go much faster in motorsports than the NHRA. 330 miles per hour in, the amount of distance they go. And that's why, with the help of Alex Laughlin, Travis Pastrana is set to test and go for his license in a Top Fuel ride. Happening Monday after this weekend's racing at Charlotte, Pastrana's going to get into Laughlin's ride and test and go for that Top Fuel license, something that the pair noted that they've actually been working on for over a year. Laughlin recently wrote on social media, quote, "I'm always trying to do something fun and different, whether it's racing against the Hoonigans or maybe the Street Outlaws. But this time, Travis Pastrana will pilot the Top Fuel car that I drive this coming Monday in Charlotte. Travis and I have a mutual friend, Marty Smith, who worked on the film crew for Nitro Circus." They were following the Nitro Rallycross series. He goes, "I was able to express to Travis that he can't have a show called Nitro anything unless he's had firsthand experience of what Nitro was all about. So he's getting the chance to go 300 miles per hour in a Top Fuel, Nitro-fueled, Top Fuel ride. Congratulations to Travis. This ought to be interesting. I can't wait to hear his reaction after this whole thing."
Yeah.
We heard your reaction.
Yeah.
This is from standing outside of the car. You've stood around and behind any number of race cars.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly stock cars of varying levels, be it NASCAR or at local short tracks. But you've been around IndyCar.
Yep.
You've heard, you've seen them, you've felt them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Slight difference?
Just a little.
Uh-huh.
Just a little. It's, again, that is, when you want to see something of a definition of an ultimate eye-opener, that's an eye-opener. And then some. Not just an eye-opener, but a sinus clearer. Clearing your eyes out as well.
Oh, sure. Because it'll make them tear.
And do more than that. It will make sure that all of your airways and your lungs are working properly, because the fumes of nitro will hit every little airway in your lung and pocket and let you know if it's working or not, because you will be set on fire. I thought, I didn't say this a couple weeks ago, but I thought the very first time that I stood as a fan in the middle of the tri-oval at Talladega Super Speedway, when 43 cars, yes, remember 43 cars, came blazing by you in one swoosh of a pack, and you're just like, oh, wow. Whew, okay. When you go stand literal feet behind 22,000 horsepower on a line firing off when the light hits green on the tree, then call me. It's one of those dear Lord moments. Yeah. And that's the rated Y7 version.
Yeah. I mean, the whole situation is kind of, I haven't had the chance to do it, but there's a couple of places that have roller coaster rides called some variation on something like Top Fuel Dragster. Mm-hmm. These are roller coaster rides that will punch you from 0 to about 130 to 140 miles per hour within about a second and a half to 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. These guys in real life, remember, are in the span of about 3.3 seconds doing 330 miles per hour. Think of the G-forces in that particular situation. And then think of Travis Pastrana, who has gone the better part of 200 miles per hour in NASCAR, Xfinity specifically.
Yep.
But he ain't getting up to 200 miles per hour in 2 to 3 seconds.
No, more like about 55 to 60 seconds, probably.
But knowing about Travis Pastrana as much as I have learned, Travis Pastrana has probably had a grin on his face since the moment this thing was announced. He can't wait for this adrenaline rush.
And not putting anything past Travis Pastrana, he may try to launch a Top Fuel car over 500 buses, knowing him. I mean, just knowing him. But hey,
go for it, Travis.
Yeah,
I hope you get yourself your Top Fuel license.
Absolutely.
Real quick here, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of NASCAR. Don't have any Truck Series news for the week, but we have got quite a bit of Cup news. We've got a little bit of Xfinity Series news, specifically some things going on over at one of the top teams in Xfinity. We'll talk about that. Plus, we got a little bit of just general racing news to give you. So we'll be right back. Thank you very much for checking us out again this Saturday morning right here on CRN Live on YouTube.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Two tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. Portions of which being brought to you by our fine friends over at Ox Foundation Solutions, specifically our good friend Michael Hart. He's the guy you need to either call or email if you're anywhere in the state of Alabama. Again, doesn't matter where, all the way up at the Tennessee state line, down by the Gulf Coast, up against the Mississippi state line, or butted right up against the Georgia state line. Anywhere in the state of Alabama, he can go, and he, at no cost and at no obligation to you, can come and check out the foundation of your home and make sure everything's set. I mean, think about it. As expensive as homes are nowadays, and I get it, the home market is kind of easing a little bit. It's not as tight as it once was, but it's still not cheap to get into a house. This is a certainly long-term investment. And you want to make sure that for the amount of time that you're paying for that house, that the house is going to be in good shape, right? Get the people that we trust. Get the people that you know you can trust. Michael Hart's one of those guys. Remember this number or email 205-362-6419 or Mike at oxfoundations.com. And if you have an older house and you have started to realize things like uneven floors, doors or windows sticking, maybe you're thinking cracks in your brick on the outside, maybe your basement walls or your sheetrock on the inside, or maybe you just got a damp, musty smell inside the basement or the crawl space of your home. Now, none of these are proof that you got a foundation problem, but they are signs that you might. 205-362-6419 or Mike at oxfoundations.com. Have him come out again. no cost to you and at no obligation to you. Let him go through the house. He'll come up with a written foundation assessment for you, and he'll tell you flat out. You got a problem, he'll write it up. He'll detail it. He'll give you a proper estimate. If you don't have a problem, he'll write it up. He'll detail it in as much as you have no problem, hand you a copy of it, and that's that. Well, let's go back to the situation where you might have a problem. He'll give you the cost estimate on that, and he'll tell you this is pretty much what it's going to cost to fix it. And I can pretty much guarantee you if that's the number he gave you, that's the number they were going to hit until you give him the promo code that you hear right here, WEST, W-E-S-T. You give him that, he takes 15% off of that amount that he just gave you. All because you heard about it right here on CRN Live on YouTube. Not a bad deal, huh? 205-362-6419. Mike at oxfoundations.com. Remember the promo code WEST if you've got a problem. I hope that you don't, but if you do, Michael Hart and the folks over at Ox Foundation Solutions are the people that can take care of it for you. Mm-hmm. All right, the winner of the race last Saturday night, as we mentioned, was Chris, or as he had over the door, Christopher Buescher. We detailed it in the recap at the beginning of the show. This actually, you might not have remembered, marks his second career win in the Cup Series competition. You could be forgiven if you forgot about the first one. After all, it was 6 years and 222 races ago. He claimed his win in a rain-shortened race at the Pocono Raceway back in 2016. And as we noted, in the process of winning that race, he became the 19th different driver to claim a win in the Cup Series this year, tying 2001 in the modern era, which again dates back to 1972. But the thing about it is, even if you go back further, we've never had more than 19 winners in any Cup Series season whatsoever. The first time I think it happened was 61 or 62, if I'm remembering my stats correctly. So if we just get one more winner in 7 more races, remember, we're just this weekend starting the round of 12. It's Texas, Talladega, and the Roval. And then we go to the round of 8, and then we go to the Championship 4. 3 races here, 3 races next round, 1 more race. Between all of those races, 7, there's a half-decent chance we can get one more first-time season winner.
Right now, as it currently sits, it's an actual 5-way tie.
There you go.
1956.
56, I'm
1958. 1961.
I did get 61 correct.
2001. 2022.
We might just see 20. And again, I look at Texas, and there are teams that have this whole 1.5-mile tri-oval thing pretty much down. That being said, Ryan Blaney, we keep looking at that 12 car who's in the playoffs, and we keep thinking, how the heck has he not won a race this year?
Oh, yeah.
He could be the guy. But if I'm a betting man, I'm not. But if I am a betting man, I would say the best chance out of the next 7, truth be told, is next weekend at Talladega.
So you're just the 2001 winners, your 19 different winners that year. Here's your throwback.
Yeah.
Michael Waltrip.
Wow. Yeah.
Steve Park.
Yep.
Jeff Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Harvick.
Remember, this was the year that we lost Dale Earnhardt. This was the 29 car that had been the 3 car.
Mm-hmm. Dale Jarrett.
By the way, you want to talk about a real popular win. Woo, that Kevin Harvick win.
Yep.
Man.
Elliott Sadler. There were 6 different ones in the first 6 races.
Yep. We saw a lot of that this year.
Bobby Hamilton.
Wow.
Rusty Wallace. Tony Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Burton.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Rudd. Dale Jr.
It's like a walk down memory lane.
Bobby Labonte. Sterling Marlin.
Ooh, nice.
Ward Burton.
Wad Button.
Ricky Craven. Joe Nemechek. Bill Elliott. Robbie Gordon.
Bill Elliott. That would have been the first year of the Dodge coming back, too.
2001.
That was a popular win as well.
But Sterling Marlin technically got Dodge's first win back that year.
That's true.
In Michigan.
But no disrespect to Sterling Marlin.
Oh, sure.
When Bill Elliott, who let's face it, he was the most popular driver pretty much of all time up to that point, and he goes and he brings Dodge back into victory lane. Ooh,
Yep.
man, that was a popular win.
Yep.
Wow. We'll see. As for Ryan Blaney, they got a situation they're going to have to go through because they got that gauntlet, and they're going to probably end up having to do it without their regular crew chief, Jonathan Hassler. He's going to have to sit out 4 races because, well, let's face it, the 12 lost its left rear right after pitting on lap 92. His pit crew realized something was wrong, began waving their arms, but Blaney, as a driver is trained to do, once the car was dropped off, the jack took off. Within 2 stalls, he slowed. The wheel came off, rear wheel, rolled through several pit stalls before actually kind of coming to a stop in the 3 stall for Austin Dillon. Hassler will be out for 4 races, as the Jackman and the rear tire changer. The team, not surprisingly, has appealed, so they're working this weekend in Las Vegas. But we have yet, and I doubt seriously that we will, when it comes to this wheel situation, see an appeal overturned. So they're going to be sitting out 4 races. Their main goal, however, is to get from the round of 12, which they're in right now, to the round of 8.
Yep.
And they realize that between Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval, Texas is likely their best chance. So they appeal, and it allows those 3 crew members who would have been sitting out to work this weekend. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not the first person to say this. I'll actually give credit to Larry McReynolds, who was on NASCAR Race Hub yesterday on Fox Sports 1, for saying this. But I was coming pretty much to the same conclusion when I started reading this story. In the fact that, I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure this is going to get to appeal. They're going to throw everything they got at trying to win this race this weekend in Texas to cement their ticket to the round of 8. Because they don't want to have to rely on Talladega. They don't want to have to rely on the Roval. And Ryan Blaney is not horrible, but he's not the most accomplished road course racer in the world. So, therefore, they're going to put as many eggs in this basket, Texas, as they possibly can. And if he does become winner number 20 on the year, what do you want to bet come Monday or by Sunday night, they withdraw their appeal?
Probably so.
Then there's this, and I have to admit, I do kind of wonder whether Kyle Busch is privately stewing about this. But when it comes to pit crews, things are being swapped over at Joe Gibbs Racing. They're taking, with Kyle Busch now eliminated from the playoffs, the pit crew of the 18, widely regarded as the best one on pit road right now, and they're moving them. They're switching the crews of the 18 and the 11 because they say they want to try and give Denny Hamlin every chance to win the 2022 title, which would be, obviously, his first. Chris Hall, who is I love this phrase, this is Joe Gibbs Racing, remember? Chris Hall is the Joe Gibbs Racing Director of Player Advancement. Okay.
That's a new one.
Very football related. Told Racer.com, quote, with the 18 eliminated from championship contention, we felt the move was necessary to optimize the 11's chances through the remainder of the playoffs. However, we fully expect both teams to help their respective team contend for race wins, close the 2022 season. This is all the over-the-wall crew members. The crew chiefs remain as they were, just to let you know. No, I'm not trying to throw shade at the 11 pit crew as they were up until this weekend. But number one, if you're a part of the 11, if you're part of what had been the crew of the 11, aren't you not a little bit upset that they don't feel that you're good enough to propel Denny Hamlin to a title?
A little, yeah.
Number two, if you're Kyle Busch and you've had what is arguably the best pit crew in the entire series, aren't you thinking that this is somewhat retribution for you having announced you ain't going to be there next year and you already know where you're going? Which is to Chevrolet?
Probably so. Probably so. Hence what I said earlier about the 2 engine failures in 3 weeks. And 1 engine failure happens under caution.
You know, if Joe Gibbs Racing wasn't located in North Carolina, I might tell them to call Ox Foundation Solutions because I think there are cracks in the foundation over there. I really do. I really do.
That's a good one right there.
Trackhouse Racing. I mean, remember, this is a team that came into the Cup Series just in 2021, and in 2022 already expanded out to 2 teams and claimed wins for both of those cars.
Mm-hmm.
And they're already looking to expand, but not necessarily in the Cup Series, or for that matter in NASCAR. Justin Marks, who is the primary co-owner of the team, said one of his next steps might just be the Indy 500. Talked to Racer.com this week, said Trackhouse Entertainment, parent group, is recognizing properties and assets in professional motorsports that present opportunities to bring new and compelling experiences to market. Well, it's just a fancy way of saying, you know what? We'd like to expand out, and we've identified the Indy 500 as a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah.
Marks continued, quote, "There's nothing I would not consider. It would have to move the needle for us, though. Trackhouse is all about really doing unique and compelling things, whether that's in short track racing or dirt racing or the Indy 500 or IMSA or NASCAR or anything like that." Call Matt. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and we're looking at them all right now. Not that it will happen in 2023, adding that he's looking at all forms of racing to see what makes the most sense. He'd like to get more information about what it would take for Trackhouse to get into IndyCar. If I were you, there are 2 phone calls I would make. One is to Rick Ware Racing, and the other would be to the team that he has cooperated with in IndyCar, Dale Coyne. They could at least give you a couple of hints as to what you could begin to look at.
Could. But I could see him getting into the likes and getting tied up. Just knowing how Justin Marks is, how he operates. I could see him linking up. Oh, Trackhouse forms, seeing the headline come out from Marshall Pruitt at Racer.com. Justin Marks and Trackhouse Entertainment Group forms partnership with Arrow McLaren SP to start new team. I could see that. But
I could definitely see that.
if you're wanting to get into dirt racing,
Mm-hmm. We know the guy.
I will gladly drive the car for you.
And I will admit, because I don't have a PlayStation 4 or 5 yet, I don't have an Xbox One. I've never been an Xbox guy, with all due respect to them. Xbox One, Series S, or Series X. Or if you get the PC game NASCAR 21 Ignition, you actually get to keep it. And this has been one of probably my biggest complaints when it comes to a Madden or an NCAA football or even a Major League Baseball video game. They update them every single year. You have to go out and you have to buy a brand new video game at the point of minimum $50, sometimes $75 or $80 a pop. But if you went out and you bought NASCAR 21 Ignition, keep a hold of it and get prepared, because they're about to send down an update that will get you ready for NASCAR 22. And instead of buying a whole new game, all you got to do is download it on October the 6th, and you'll get new things like new user interface elements, some easier to navigate menus, some new settings that are in there. New introductions from MRN's Alex Hayden come in. The 2022 tracks, drivers, teams, and paint schemes are all going to be there, and you don't have to pay for it. It's a free update if you've already got the game.
That is good.
If you haven't gotten the game yet, there's good news for you as well. You can get it now at the reduced price of $19.99. And then you get the download for free on top of that. And these are updates that become available not just for NASCAR 21 Ignition, but for owners of NASCAR Heat 5 and the NASCAR Heat mobile game. If you want more information, just log on to NASCAR Ignition, all one word, NASCARignition.com. Junior Motorsports is making some changes.
Not surprising to me.
This, to me, is the next step in them starting to make a move towards going Cup racing.
Oh, sure. There's
They
no
won't
question.
admit it. They will not admit it. But I can almost guarantee you that this is what they're setting to do. Junior Motorsports set to make the changes. Dale Jr. himself said this week that these moves at the executive level are being made to strengthen the company as a whole, to help it grow as the company now enters their third decade of operation. This is really not the biggest shock at all. Kelly Earnhardt Miller has been made first and foremost the CEO over all of Dale Jr.'s companies, not just the race team, but DEJ Management and Dirty Mo Media, who's the multimedia company and digital content platform that he's got that has, for example, the Dale Jr. Download that is on podcasting, is on streaming, and every once in a while, depending on how things go, like rain delays, shows up on NBC or USA during Cup Series coverage.
Yep.
Earnhardt Miller's managed her brother's company and career basically since 2001, has helped build Junior Motorsports into what it is now, a multiple championship winning organization. They boast over 100 race wins in Xfinity competition. Mike Davis, who's the president and executive director of Dirty Mo Media, he's been named a partner in that division as well. He's also named a new vice president of strategy and development for DEJ Management. That's Tony Mayhoff. Joe Mattis becomes the senior VP of business and strategy for Junior Motorsports. And L.W. Miller has been named to the position of senior VP of Motorsports, up from his old position of Junior Motorsports Director of Competition, where he's been since 2011. Since then, L.W. Miller has only led the organization to 3 Xfinity Series titles, 1 Advance Auto Parts Weekly Series crown, a Cars Late Model Tour title, and multiple local track championships, all under Junior Motorsports' banner. Not a bad record.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Now, they continue to talk about, yeah, we'd like to go Cup Series racing, but we're not going to jump into it blindfolded. We're doing our due diligence. We want to make sure it's the right place, the right time, and we have the money to be able to do it. Here's the thing. This reorganization right here, all of that is intended to get that situation and that operation prepared in whatever way that it takes, whatever way that it manifests to go into the Cup Series.
Yep. It's coming. They keep talking about it way too much for it to not be coming.
And the truth of the matter is they're either going to, my opinion, I don't think they're going to start up from the ground floor their own Cup Series operation. They're going to buy out, or they'll buy into or buy out an existing Cup Series operation.
Probably so. I could see that more than starting it from the ground up.
They'll do it lock, stock, and barrel, charters included, and that's how they're going to start their Cup Series operation.
Because you know good and well Chevrolet is going to be 200% behind whatever move he makes.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, no disrespect to Hendrick Motorsports. They are the flagship in the Cup Series at for Chevrolet. But as much as you didn't want to lose, for example, Stewart Haas Racing, you let him go because you understand you got Hendrick. You're not letting go Dale Jr.
Nope.
You're going to do what you can to make that man happy.
Yep. There's if they was to pull, in which I don't see it happening, but if they was to pull a Toyota-esque move, Chevrolet would be all but dead.
Oh, yeah. Because really all they would have left, no disrespect to Richard Childress Racing, who I'll give him credit for going out and getting a Kyle Busch, they are not on the level of Hendrick Motorsports.
Yet.
They could get back to that level, but they're not there.
They're not there yet. Correct. But
at this point in time, if Dale Jr. were to buy a Chevrolet operation, I'm trying to come up with one of the lower ones.
Let's see. Hendrick RCR Trackhouse.
And it's not going to be Trackhouse.
You got, let's see, Hendrick RCR Trackhouse.
Let's say Spire. I doubt Spire will sell, okay?
Spire, yeah.
I'm just going to throw their name out there just for the sake of moving this part along. Let's say Junior bought out, totally, Spire Motorsports. 2 charters, come along with that automatically, the 7 and the 77. And I think they got a lease out there.
Yeah, but I can't.
They might have a lease out there, which means they'll get that back next year. Assuming that that's right, even if they're only 2, they are immediately in Chevrolet's eyes on an even keel with Richard Childress Racing. Right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And if they do, as we think, have a third lease out there, third charter out there that's on lease to another team, which they get back under their umbrella beginning 2023 and have to figure out what they're going to do with it, either use it or sell it. Now, all of a sudden, they actually have a one-up on Richard Childress Racing on the new Junior Motorsports, assuming that they did this within the next 4 months.
Spire only has 2.
Okay, so they don't have a lease.
Yep.
Again, they come in with 2 leases, 2 charters on an even keel with Richard Childress Racing. And believe me, Chevrolet's looking at them exactly on an even par with RCR. Sorry, Richard. But yeah, Junior Motorsports automatically comes in as an even player with you. That's just the way it is.
Dare I say, but Hendrick, RCR, Trackhouse, Petty GMS, Colleague, Spire.
GMS is not going to sell.
Yeah, GMS is not going to sell.
Colleague's not going to sell.
A couple of things that I've heard floating, GMS may be about to expand.
I could believe that. I could believe that.
Because
Colleague's not going to sell.
no, Matt Colleague's not going to sell. If anything, Matt Colleague's going to expand.
So at this point in time, you might maybe, I don't think Spire would sell unless Earnhardt was just overwhelmed them with an offer, and I don't think that they're willing to put that kind of money out there. But I could see them becoming a partner.
And he would have the backing from multiple partners and investors to do that.
Mm-hmm.
He could do it with ease, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think Spire would be willing to partner with Earnhardt, which would immediately raise their level.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, Chevrolet will figure it out. If Junior Motorsports wants to go Cup Series racing, the Bowtie brand will figure out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of sentence. Over at Joe Gibbs Racing, they're all in on Ty Gibbs going for this year's Xfinity Series title. But they've decided against pulling him from double-duty options, as long as he's got them. As we've talked about, Ty has been filling in for Kurt Busch while Busch continues recovery from that concussion he suffered in qualifying back at Pocono. Apparently, an edict came down from Toyota's David Wilson. I find this interesting. He was the one who talked about young Ty Gibbs. This did not come from Joe Gibbs Racing. This came from TRD's David Wilson, the president of TRD, who said that the young Ty Gibbs will continue as needed in the now 23 at 2311 Racing until one of 2 things happens. Kurt's cleared to race or the end of the 2022 season comes along.
If Kurt's not, I said this a couple weeks ago, if Kurt is not cleared now, Kurt's not coming back the rest of the year.
And he may not come back next year because of all this situation with Tyler Reddick.
Sure.
Again, we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen between that because technically Reddick's still under RCR control contractually through next year.
Toyota now will have the money to buy that contract out. You can't tell me that they don't.
So they're saying that they're all in on Ty Gibbs winning the Xfinity Series title, which he does have a legitimate shot at. There's no doubt about it. The kid's good. We might question some of his tactics as a 19-year-old inexperienced, kind of almost punk kid, but the kid's talented. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, no question.
But the thing about it is, if you're all in on this, how much is him pulling double duty this weekend at Texas, next weekend at Talladega, for example? I mean, even at 19 years old, doesn't this eventually wear on you some?
Oh, sure it would. Even though you'd be like a 3-year-old going into a Skittles store or an M&M bar store getting a whole bunch of candy. Heck yeah, I get to race 800 miles at Talladega next weekend. I get to race 800 miles at Texas this weekend. But I don't think it's honestly doing him any good because the cars are so vastly different.
Yeah, it's not like he's
I don't
getting a
think
whole
they
lot
are.
of stuff that he can take from Saturday to Sunday.
But David Wilson's statement is essentially him with the Bob Ross afro on, the palette, his brush, his half unbuttoned blue button-down shirt with his denim pants on, standing there painting the happy little clouds and the happy little trees and painting that picture that Gibbs is going to Cup next year.
Yeah.
It's clear.
It's all but been announced.
Yeah. It's all but being.
I mean, they have been grooming him for Cup since earlier on this year when Joe Gibbs said, I'd like to run Ty in Xfinity competition through 2023 and then bring him up to Cup in 2024. That path has been laid out for him.
Yeah.
The only thing is with Kyle Busch now announcing I'm not going to be at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023, your hand's almost forced. And it's why, for example, we're watching drivers leave Joe Gibbs Racing because they realize I ain't got a chance to get to Cup with them.
Or leaving Toyota in droves. You know?
At one point in time, Toyota's cupboard was full. It's about to be empty because they don't see a path to get to Cup.
Bear.
Ty Gibbs is it. What do they do after Denny Hamlin? Because Denny Hamlin's up in his mid-40s. No disrespect to Denny. He's got, what, maybe 2-3 years left, tops? Realistically?
Unless he pulls a Tom Brady.
Kind of is right now.
I was going to say 5.
Tops.
But, I mean, now that essentially the mass exodus is happening with Busch gone, actually, I'm going to say both Bushes essentially gone. You've got,
Yeah, probably true.
you've got Brandon Jones going back to Chevrolet.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially have, hypothetically, let's say Gibbs is going to Cup. Okay, all but announced. Joe Gibbs Racing essentially has no Xfinity program.
What are you going to do? Fill all of them up with Moonlighters next year?
You got, you got somebody the likes of Corey Heim that is proving himself legitimately in trucks
Okay.
that could take the step up. I could see him taking a step up to Xfinity next
You
year.
feel he's ready for that?
If he's not ready, he is extremely close.
Okay.
John Hunter Nemechek, that's a given.
Oh, sure.
That's a given.
And Toyota has already said that they want to keep him.
Yeah. So,
But let me go back to this. Corey Heim, John Hunter Nemechek, they get to go up to Xfinity, which John Hunter Nemechek would like to get back up to the Cup Series level. He's had a taste of it, but he also wanted to win titles. And that's why he dropped all the way back from Front Row Motorsports in the Cup Series a couple of years ago to Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Camping World Truck Series. I'm quite certain he'd be willing to stay with Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing to move to the Xfinity Series next year. How many years is he willing to sit there and wait for something to break at the top level of Joe Gibbs Racing?
I don't know. But here's another something that literally talking about Toyota just came to my mind. That listening to one of the podcasts I listened to this week, the Door Bumper Clear podcast. And more times than none, they're correct because it consists of TJ Majors, Brett Griffin, Freddie Kraft. They're
They
in the
know what they're
sport
talking about.
every single day of the week.
Yeah, they know what they're talking about.
DGR may be going back to Toyota.
That's an interesting thought.
Haley Deegan's under Ford.
Yeah.
Where does Haley go? Does she go to Front Row?
Is she ready for Xfinity competition?
Heck no, she's not.
No, so that pretty much leaves Stewart Haas Racing out. And Team Penske has no Xfinity operation at this time.
Nor a Truck Series operation.
Yeah.
So essentially, your only Ford Truck Series team would be the one truck team of Front Row. Front Row go to 2 trucks?
I think they could do that. I think
Yeah.
they can handle that.
Oh, they can handle that.
They can
because
handle that.
Ford would be, hey Bob.
Yeah.
Edsel Ford here. Want to take this truck series operation to 2 trucks, maybe 3?
Nature
Who knows?
abhors a vacuum, as they say. Kyle Busch Motorsports has already announced we're leaving Toyota next year when the boss goes to Richard Childress Racing and Chevrolets. We're leaving Toyota. We're going to Chevrolet. Opens up a massive door
Yeah.
for a Toyota team. So, it would kind of make sense that DGR would be considering it because there is that opening over there
And think about this one, too.
alongside ThorSport.
Think about this one, too. Ryan Preece.
Sure.
He's under Stuart Haas and Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Where does he go?
Yep.
Does he just go to a second Xfinity car? What does he do? Speaking of Ryan Preece, can I go ahead and lock in my odds-on favorite for the truck race next week?
Sure.
Ryan Preece.
There you go.
They're bringing the 3rd truck out for Talladega.
There it is. We'll see. We got things that we still have yet to figure out because for all intents and purposes, it looks like Stuart Haas Racing is going to stand pat for next year. Now that the Kyle Busch sweepstakes is over and Stuart Haas Racing didn't get him, it looks like they're going to stand pat with the 4 drivers that they got, which means Cole Custer's coming back, which means we got to figure out what we're going to do with Riley Herbst. Probably back in the 98 next year.
Yeah.
We know that 00 that Cole Custer used to drive is still kind of hanging out there dangling in the breeze.
Mm-hmm.
Could be Ryan Preece's car. Could be that you dump Riley Herbst and you go to Ryan Preece. I kind of doubt that, truth be told. But it's a possibility.
I kind of would.
Well, I'm just saying.
I would.
Here's my question. Would you just change drivers or would you put the second car out there and try and strengthen your position that much more by having these 2 teams be able to converse with each other?
Honestly, I would see how this 7-race playoff stretch goes and make my decision after Phoenix.
And I will say this, unlike last year where he was real bad out of the gate and then later on in the season kind of picked it up, Riley Herbst has been solid, if not spectacular, pretty much all year.
Yep.
I mean, it seems like we're constantly talking about him being a top 10, top 5 finisher. He just hasn't been able to claim a win. And I'll say yet, because there's still a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not willing to put him in a cup car. That's for certain, because I don't think he's proven it yet. But he is capable of being highly competitive at the Xfinity level.
Oh,
I don't have a
extremely.
problem necessarily keeping him.
Yeah.
But I will say this, that leash or that fishing line that he's on has gotten real short.
Yeah.
Because sooner or later, you're either going to have to fish or you're going to have to cut bait. And if you can't claim a win, I got to cut bait and go find a guy who can put my car in the winning circle, in the winner circle. Cole Custer could do that. We know that it can be done. But we haven't seen it out of you yet, Riley.
Yep.
So where are you going? What are you doing? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Show me something. Show me or we're going to figure out something else. I might be willing to put that second Xfinity car out there if I'm Stuart Haas Racing. Because I do think it strengthens you a little bit more by having the ability to have those 2 teams talk to each other.
Yep. I agree.
And then we get to something that we noted on the show last week, just kind of racing in general. Ford unveiled several different versions of their next generation Mustang that is set to debut on tracks all around the world and for the 2024 racing season. Well, they not only did an unveiling here in the U.S., they did an unveiling down under in Australia. And on hand was Ford Performance Division Director Mark Rushbrook. Rushbrook was asked by media whether he was in favor of the supercar series adopting hybrid technology in the future, and he said Ford's position on that has changed. Huh? Remember, Ford as a company has said, for all intents and purposes, they pretty much want to be an all-electric car company by about 2030 to 2035. So this is an interesting comment on Rushbrook's part. Rushbrook said specifically, quote, "We were definitely 2 or 3 years ago pushing for electrification, including hybrid in a lot of different series around the world. We're not, honestly, at this point. I know we have it with our Puma Hybrid in the World Rally Championship." It's a car that is not sold here in the United States, by the way. "And it's actually working quite well there, and we have learned a lot from that we can transfer to our road cars. But in series including supercars and NASCAR and some other sports car racing series that we're in, I do believe that ICE, or internal combustion engines, will continue to work very well for us for the foreseeable future because it does create that spectacle. It does create that emotional, passionate connection to the vehicle, which helps our brand. At this point, with some of the cost and complexity with hybrid, if it's not going to add to the race, then we don't think it needs to be on there. So at this point, for supercars or many of our other global series, remember he mentioned specifically NASCAR, we're not advocating to add it. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Because here's the thing about going to a stock car race. It's not just watching, for example, at Talladega, a pack of 40 cars zipping by you doing the better part of 200 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. It's the sight. It's the feel, because you can feel it. It's not just from the cars, but it's also the anticipation of the people that are in the grandstands that are alongside you.
Yeah.
It's the smells and it's the sounds. Because I'll be real honest with you, this is a typical red-blooded American guy thing, and I'll be the first person to admit it, but I'll tell you this right now. I love going into the track when they're out onto the track and you got that smell of burned race fuel and burned rubber.
Or just hearing the cars come up through the gears with the RPMs coming up.
It's the whole sensory experience.
Yep.
It's why we, as red-blooded American males, just talked to Tim Allen, for crying out loud, love to hear a good old V8 rumble. I mean, folks, for a couple of years, I was lucky enough to have a 2006 Pontiac GTO. And just to start that car, I would roll the windows down and shut the radio off and listen to it. And I've done the same thing. I had the exhaust replaced on the pickup truck that I inherited from my dad. It's a 1989 Ford F-250. And I had to have the exhaust replaced, and I put not an overtly loud system, but a nice little, I'm going to go ahead and give them the brand. Now, I'll give you the shout out, and if you'd like to sponsor us, get a hold of John through our website, crnradio.us. Flowmaster. Mm-hmm. A nice dual in, dual out muffler system on that, dual exhaust with a nice, good Ford V8 rumble coming out of the tailpipes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not overly loud. It's just got a nice, good V8 run. I'm sorry to tell you, folks, I've had V6. I've got a V6 car right now. It ain't the same.
No.
It ain't the same.
It is not.
And I've heard the whine of electric cars, both racing, Formula E, and on the road. Sorry, it just doesn't give you that feeling when you crank up a good old American V8.
You are correct.
Just doesn't happen.
You are
Thank
correct.
you, Mark Rushbrook. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yep.
May the V8 live long and prosper, to borrow Star Trek.
Yep, no doubt.
We covered everything?
We did.
All right. NASCAR today and tomorrow, NHRA tomorrow as well, and then next week, a little more full, a little more different too in all likelihood. Because, as you know, I'm one of the PA announcers up there. Matt's going to start working again next weekend. He's going to be working on the scoreboard next weekend, so that big pillar that you see in the middle, that's going to be the property of one Matt Nicholson. John Myers is going to be working next weekend, assuming he's feeling up to it. So while we'll be, more than likely, on the air, back on the flagship radio station in East Central Alabama, and, again, pending on how John feels, right here on CRN Live on YouTube, it's going to be a little different. One of the hosts on our flagship station, Grady Sapp, is going to be the man in the driver's seat, basically. Mm-hmm. Probably going to get a whole lot of NASCAR-related interviews, be they drivers, be they crew chiefs. Who knows?
Even some executives.
Maybe even some executives.
There were quite a few that we done in the spring.
So a lot of that will happen. And we're going to try and go basically whenever he goes. Now, we're not going to be broadcasting live the whole time because he's not going to be just sitting there talking the whole time. So what you will get on CRN Live will be we go live when Grady does. But, excuse me, you'll get your notification, just like you always do.
Yep.
And whenever we go live, with whatever interview, Grady and Matt, because you're going to try and be there for the first time.
My goal is that I'm going to be down there from 8 to 9.
Okay.
And then get up topside a little after 9 and start the day up.
So, and I might be able to show up a little bit because there's talk about us doing something in the media center before we actually have to be up there and get things going. So I might be able to pop in for maybe a segment or so before I have to go topside. So, but it's going to be a lot different than what you normally get. And 2 weeks from now, we should be back to regular, I think, on the flagship. We haven't found out 2 weeks from now what college football's doing.
Yeah, true.
So, depending on what college football situation is, 2 weeks from now, we'll be back at least on CRN Live here on YouTube, and probably we'll be back on the radio as well.
Yep.
We're looking forward
Should
to it. We're looking forward to it. Hope you are as well. Enjoy the racing this weekend. We'll talk to you again next weekend in some way, shape, or form. Whatever way that takes.
Live on the grounds.
That's right. Live on the grounds at Talladega Superspeedway. Y'all have a great week. We'll talk to you next week right here on the Championship Racing Network.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.